everyone! Today's video is going to be a Notion dashboard setup tutorial where you can organize your planners and tasks in one place. We'll be covering how to build a student life dashboard from scratch, building together things like an academic planner with course and assessment trackers, subpages for different planners, to-do lists, and widgets. Hopefully you find this helpful. Let's get started. So this is the dashboard we'll be making today. This one's a soft page themed dashboard, but because Notion is so customizable, you can make it into any theme or aesthetic that you like. On the top, I have a cute little bear icon and a page banner. There's also a space on the page to put a quote that we like. As for widgets, we have an interactive calendar, a clock widget, and a weather widget. Next section includes a row of planners that covers some key areas that we want to keep track of. This includes an academic planner, a finance tracker, a habit tracker, a reading journal, and a content planner. Scrolling down, we have our task manager or to-do list. This to-do list groups our tasks by categories, and it's separated into 3 views to show tasks outstanding, tasks completed, and as a Kanban board where we can easily track statuses of our tasks. Now let's get into the tutorial. As always, let's start from scratch. On the left here, you have a sidebar where you can see all your Notion pages. You can click this button to make the sidebar appear only when you hover to the side. Notion organization revolves around pages instead of using traditional folders. So the main pages in Notion are like the main sections of a book. Within each chapter, you have sections, just like how Notion pages have subpages. And throughout this tutorial, you'll see how this works to keep our Notion organized. Let's start by clicking this add a page symbol to create a new page. And let's delete this extra untitled page. Now let's give our blank page a title. Next, we can click this add icon button to give our page a personalized icon. So here we can either choose from these emojis, icons, or we can upload our own. I'm going to go with custom and use a GIF for an icon. You can also add a cover photo by clicking add cover like this. Next, let's click the 3 dots on the top right to open up the page settings. In these page settings, you can choose the font and size of the text on the page. And let's also make the page full width for more space to work with. In the Customize page settings, you can give your page more space by minimizing comments. Now let's type / to bring up the blocks menu. In Notion, content is built using blocks. And blocks are the basic units of content, which can be basically anything in this blocks menu. I'm going to start by adding a place for a quote in our dashboard. The first block I'll be using is a callout block, and then we'll see what it looks like in a sec. We can get it by looking through the blocks menu, or by typing / call and then selecting callout. Then I'm pasting a quote that I'd like into the callout block. Then if we highlight the text to bring up the formatting options, we can do things like make it bold, italic, or change the text color. We can also customize the icon for the callout box too. And then if we go into the block options, we can change the color of the callout box too to one that suits our theme. I think I'm going to go with light brown. There are many websites where you can get widgets from. Getting widgets in the Notion pretty much all follows the same steps, and I'm going to show you an example here with Indify. After you create a free account, you'll see this page with all the different widgets that you can make. Let's make a clock widget for our dashboard. Click Create Widget, give it a name, and then click Continue. And from here, we can do our widget customizations. We can choose a style for the clock, we can also choose colors and time zones. Once we're happy with it, click the copy button at the bottom to get the embed link. Now go back to our Notion page and paste in the link and click Create Embed. Now the widget's embedded on our page, and we can drag the handles to resize it. Next, I'm going to add a weather widget and made it into 5 following the same embedding steps as before. Let's arrange our 2 widgets side by side on our Notion dashboard. We can do that by dragging the weather widget and dropping it to the right of the clock like this. We can drag either the column handle or the widget handle to adjust the size. And I'll add one last mini calendar widget from widgetbox.io. Same as before, we can use the handles to resize it. And we'll drag it to the left of the clock. Now that we've added all our widgets, we can move on to the next section. Next, we're going to set up the subpages in the dashboard. These are dedicated sections for different areas such as academics, finance, habits, and more. So let's start by adding a divider block to separate this section from the previous one. And we do that by typing / and selecting divider from the menu. Next, type / columns and choose the 5 columns block. This will split the next section of the page into 5 columns. In the first column, type / page to add a new page. This will be the first subpage of our dashboard. And this page will be our academic area. For now, let's only give it a title and then go back to the dashboard. In the second column, let's add a subpage for finance following the same steps as before. In the third column, we'll make a subpage for habits. In the fourth column, we'll make a subpage for our reading journal. And finally, in the fifth column, we'll have a subpage for our content planner. Something to note is that in the blocks menu, there are options to add up to 5 columns. You can actually create more columns by dragging an empty block on the page like this and putting it on the end to make more columns. Next, let's give these pages some icons. We can either change the icons individually like this, or we can change them in a batch like this. These subpages are like subsections of the dashboard, so if you open the sidebar and expand the dashboard page, we can see that our subpages are all neatly organized in this structure. This part's purely for aesthetics, but I think adding images next to the subpages would look really nice. So let's add an image by typing / image and then uploading it. And I'm just going to use the picture that I've saved earlier. Next, let's drag and drop the image into the column above the academic page. And then we can repeat the same process for the next 4 columns. So to start, I'm typing / and then selecting divider from the blocks menu. This divider will separate our new section from the previous one. Let's give this new section a title. For the titles, I often like to make the font bold and change the highlight color so it stands out more. Next, let's add a database block. A database in Notion is a tool to organize and manage information. You can use it to create tables, lists, calendars, etc. So let's type / again to bring up the blocks menu, and let's pick the list view for our database. And then let's type in the title for our database. And then we can hide this title for a cleaner look. Let's highlight and right click to delete all these default pages. And just a side note on the title, you can highlight it and choose the heading options to make it stand out like this. Let's put in an example task to get started, and then we'll continue setting up our tracker. So I'm putting in groceries for example, and then clicking open the task. The task will open up as a page, and we can give it an icon and add more information. And since it's a page, you can also change the page settings and turn off comments like this. Next, let's delete this default created property as we don't really need it. And let's rename this tags property to be type for different types of tasks. In the options area, you can add options as labels for different task categories like this. Here, you can change the order of the options and change their colors too. And now we can assign a type to our task. Next, let's add a new date property called due date. And now we can also assign a due date to our task. And finally, let's add a status property to our database. These statuses can also be edited, and you can also change the colors like this. Now let's click back out to a task list. Here, I've just added a few more tasks as an example for the next step. Next, let's click the three dots on the top right of the list to bring up the view options. Here we can rename our view from list view to do. And if we click into the properties, we can click the little eye icon to unhide new properties we've made. We can also drag and rearrange the order of how our properties show up on the view. If we go into group in the view options, we can actually group our tasks together by name, due date, status, or type. For example, if I group by type, my tasks in the view will be organized together by types. And here you can also rearrange the order of the groupings too. And in the view, you can open and collapse the toggles like this. Next, I want to set this first view to tasks that are either not started or in progress. Let's click this little filter button on the top right of the view and click status. Then let's check the to-do and in progress statuses, but leave the complete status unchecked. Next, let's also make a view that only shows completed tasks. Let's click on this to-do view and click duplicate. And then name the second duplicated view to done. Then let's go back to the filter setting for the second view and only check the complete status. Now if we check off any items in the to-do list, it will drop off our to-do list and appear in the done list. I also find seeing all my tasks on board really useful, so let's make a Kanban board. Let's click the plus button to add a new view, and let's choose the board view. Already we can kind of see Notion putting our tasks into a board format for us. At the moment the tasks are grouped into 3 statuses, but the in progress group has been hidden. So in the view options here, let's go into the group by settings and click on the eye icon to make all of the 3 statuses visible. Then let's give this board view a name. I'm just going to call it board. Also, if we go back to the layout settings, we can make the columns stand out more by clicking color columns. From the main view option menu, If we go into the property settings, we can also choose to show more properties in the cards on the board. And finally, for a cleaner look, we can also hide the database title. And now we have a view that shows our tasks by status. We can also move our tasks around the board when their status changes. Now we're going to move on to building one of the subpages in our dashboard, which is going to be our academic planner. And as before, I'll just quickly show you what it will look like. If we click into the academic page, it will take us to a student hub. On the top, we have a list of our courses. I can also click into these courses and store my course information. Scrolling down, we have a class timetable, a place to keep track of our assessments, and an exam calendar. These sections are also collapsible, so it keeps everything neat and organized. So that's the tour. Now let's make it together. First, let's click into the academic subpage we made before. In the top right, we can open up the page settings to choose our page font, text size, and page width. And like before, we can also go into the customize page settings to turn off comments. Next, let's also add a cover photo. Then like we did in the main dashboard, I'm going to add in a nice quote at the top of the page, and also change the font color to suit the aesthetic of our page. To make it stand out a bit more, we can turn this block into a quote block in the block settings like this. Next, let's type /board and choose the board view. And let's name this database class timetable. Now we can hide the database title here for a cleaner look. So this will be a database where we store our class timetable information. Let's first make a nice heading for this section. In any empty space, type a heading called class timetable. Then we can highlight the text and change it to a heading style like this. We can also change the background color of the block. And finally, let's move the heading to the top. Next, let's highlight these cards created by default and delete them. Then let's click New to add a new card and then click the empty card open. This will be our first class on our timetable. Then let's delete these properties that came by default. Now because this is a board view, you might notice that it won't let us delete all the properties, but that's okay for now. Next, let's add a multi-select property called Day for days of the school week. Let's add in other weekdays in the options section. We can drag and rearrange the order of these options. And we can also change the colors like this. For this example, let's assign the first class to Monday. Now we can delete the status property. And let's also give this page a nice icon. Next, let's create a new text property called Time. And in this property, we'll put in time details about our class. Next, let's make another text property called Location for where our classes are taking place. I've popped in a few more classes as examples before the next step. Next, let's go into the View Layout options by clicking the three dots on the top right of the board. And then let's click into the layout settings. If we click into Group By, we We can see that all our classes are grouped by days, but not all the days are visible. So let's click these little eye icons for the hidden days to unhide them. We can also turn on color columns here to make the columns on our board stand out more. And we can also rearrange these so the order of the days are right. If we go into the property settings in the view options, we can also hide more information about the classes from the properties we've made. So now they'll show up in the cards on the board. And this is what our class timetable looks like after I added a few more examples in. We can also rename this board by clicking on the tab and then clicking rename. So for example, this might be week 1 of a 2-week timetable. Before we move on, I'm just going to make it a little change. Another way I like to organize my content is through using toggle blocks. So here I'm going to change my heading block into a toggle block. And bold the heading to make it stand out. Then I'm going to drag the whole class timetable inside the toggle block. And now we can expand the toggle when we need to access the timetable and collapse it when we don't. Next, let's type /database and add a gallery view. Let's name this database courses and delete the default cards. Let's click +new to add our first course. And this will open up a new page for us. Title of the page will be the name of your course. For example, it can be Biology 101. But in this tutorial, we'll just keep it as Course 1. Like any other page, we can give it an icon to represent what the page is about. So I'll give my course page a notebook icon. And then we can delete these 2 default properties. Next, let's make a new multi-select property called year. And then put in our school years as options. We can also rearrange the order and change the color of the options here. Next, let's add another multi-select property called semester. In the options, let's put our school semesters. And then we can continue to add in all our courses like this. Now that we've added a few more example classes, let's move on to the next step. Next, let's give our courses cover images in the gallery. Let's click back into the first card and add a page cover. After our picture's finished uploading, let's click back to the list of courses. Next, let's go into the view settings on the top right and click into the layout settings. Then choose the page cover option for card preview. And change the card size to small so all our courses can fit into a row. And now let's also add a picture for all our other courses by repeating the same steps. Next, let's also add a new status property to show the status of our courses. After we've made the property, we can assign statuses to our courses. We can use the status property for a lot of different things. For example, we can make our course gallery only show the current courses we're taking. Let's click onto the gallery tab and rename the view to current courses. Next, let's create a filter on the status property to only show in progress courses. Finally, let's hide the database title and drag this gallery view of courses onto the top of the page. Let's now move on to the next section of the student planner. Type /database and add a new inline database called assessments. Let's put in an assessment as an example. Next, click the tags property and rename it to type for the types of assessments. Then go into edit property and add in the types of assessments as our options. For example, our assessment 1 can be a presentation. Next, let's add a new date property called due date. And now we can give our assessment a due date. Next, let's add a new status property. These will be the statuses for our assessments. And then let's delete these 2 empty rows that came as default. Next, we're going to add a new formula property called days left. This property will calculate for us how much time is left until our assessments are due. Let's click on Edit Formula in the settings. Now type in this formula. It's a bit long, so if you need, make sure to pause the video or take a screenshot. Once we're done editing the formula, click the Done button. And now it should automatically display for us how many days are left until our assessments are due. So for example, if we set the due date to a date that's already passed, and the status is not done, then it will say overdue like this example here. In other words, if the due date's in the future, it will show how many days left instead of overdue. This base formula can also be edited. For example, I can add a siren emoji next to the overdue, and now the overdue stands out a bit more. There's a lot more you can do with formulas, but it's a bit more complex for this video, so maybe we'll cover it another time. Next, we'll link our assessments to our courses on the top here. To do this, we'll add a new relation property in our assessments database. After we choose the relation property type, click Courses to create the relationship between the assessments and courses database. And then click Add Relation. We can drag the courses column to the front. And now we can link our assessments to our courses. So if we scroll up and add a new course into our course list, for example, if I added a new course 5, it will now appear in this list for me to choose from. Next, let's add a new text property called grade. Our assessment 1 example hasn't been started, so you won't have a grade. So let's create another example where the assessment has been completed. And for this example, we can give it a grade. I don't really like how the tables are going off the screen, so here we can drag and adjust the size of the columns for a better fit. Next, let's go into the view settings and rename the view to all for all assessments. Then we can go into the layout options and turn off vertical lines for a cleaner look. Next, let's go into the sort option and sort our assessments by the due date. And now the assessments due sooner is at the top. Next, let's duplicate the first view. We'll name this view active, as we only want this view to show our unfinished assessments. So let's set a filter on status for this view. Select only the to-do and in-progress statuses and let complete be unchecked. This is what the table looks like after I've added a few more examples. Finally, let's add a toggle block for our assessment section. Let's give the section a title that matches with all the sections before. Let's open the toggle and drag the whole assessments table inside it. Then let's change the background color of the toggle block to grey like the other sections. And finally, we can hide the database title for a cleaner look. And now we can track our class timetable or assessments in these two sections. Next, let's move on to making an exam timetable. This time, let's choose the Table View database from the Blocks menu. And name this new database Exam Calendar. Let's rename this name column to Exam. And I'll use Course 1 Midterm as my example exam. Next, rename the Tags column to Type. Click on Edit Property, and then add in your exam types as options. And then also let's add a date property for our exam date. Next, let's add a new status property. And let's also delete these rows that came by default. Next, let's add a relation property to connect our courses to our exams. Make sure here we choose the courses database to relate to, then click Add Relation. And now we can choose the course that our exam belongs to. And I'm just going to organize my rows and columns here for a neater look. I've also added a few more examples. A little tip here, if you have exams that last for more than a day, you can turn on this end date toggle and add an end date. We can also put a start and end time if we want. Click the three dots to bring up the view options, rename the list full list for the full list of exams, and then go into layout and turn off the vertical lines for a neater look. Next, click the plus button to add a new view and choose the calendar view. Now the exams that we added in before will be on this calendar. We can also add more information about our exam by clicking open the page. Finally, let's add a toggle. Let's expand this toggle and give this section a header. Then drop the exam calendar database inside the toggle block. And hide the database title for a cleaner look. Next, we can change the background color of the toggle block to match the other sections. And now our student planner subpage is complete. If you're looking for a more detailed and expanded tutorial for a student planner, there's another video in my channel that you can check out. Now let's talk about adding other subpages into our dashboard. An example could be adding a finance tracker. There are detailed tutorials on other pages you can make on my channel which you can follow. If you're using other templates, I want to go over quickly how you can combine it with this dashboard. I'm using one of my templates as example, but this method will work with all other templates. So in our template, we want to click this duplicate button at the top. Then click Add to Private. And now the template will be copied into our private Notion workspace. Next, let's drag this finance tracker template and drop it into the dashboard. Now if we click into our dashboard, we can see that the finance tracker is inside. And the template will be at the bottom of our dashboard page. Then we can drag it up to where we plan for it to be. And now we just need to make sure our template matches our page aesthetic. We can change the icon to match the other pages. And we can also delete the placeholder page we made before. And also edit the page title to match. I hope this has been helpful. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like or subscribe for more videos in the future.